we look at the boss-subordinate relationships as it is portrayed in the show, it really is an interesting study into the psychology of workplace resentment and how it grows and evolves the further along the totem pole you go, and the further away you are from the people who report to you. After all, Mark's relationship with his team after he's made department chief, and even PT's relationship with the rest of the MDR crew, which we get glimpses of and can make assertions about based on what Arvin, Dylan, and Mark to some extent say about PT, is vastly different to Mark's relationship with Harmony Cobell, or Harmony Cobell's relationship with Seth Milchick, or her relationship with members of the board who she reports to, or Milchick's relationship with members of the MDR, which looks slightly different when he's the deputy of the severed floor and when he initially gets his promotion, and then much different after he's had to settle into the role, which influences his relationship with Mr. Drummond and even that with Miss Wong. See, the threads can be drawn about the difference and similarities of how Harmony most likely started off as Eustace until her work turned her into Mrs. Cobell, and how we see the gradual change and transformation with Seth Milchick is interesting as a further observation of office politics and how it has the capacity to change people, build resentment, and ultimately lead to supervisors actively disliking the people who report to them. The themes of the supervisor-subordinate relationship and how it can be interpreted as an outlet for the repressed resentment born from when the one now in a position of power and authority had none, and how although there might be different types of management styles with regards how various supervisors decide to lead their team, ultimately the hate and resentment always flows from top down and in turn creates a cycle that can never be broken thanks to corporate greed and how it's fueled by enforcing power in various capacity. This theme is a recurring one in Severance, and it's one I find fascinating because before there was Mrs. Cobell, there was Mr. Milchick, and before there was Mr. Milchick, there was Miss Wong. The social conditioning that necessitates that you strip yourself of all human empathy for the sake of efficiency is unfortunately a cost we are all bearing collectively as humanity struggles through corporate interest and capitalism in the 21st century. And Severance shows that brilliantly in the 2 seasons we've gotten so far. Yes, I finally got around to watching Severance seasons 1 and 2. Shout out to my patrons, one of whom recommended I get into the show. It's been quite a righteous ride and has made the illness I was dealing with for the last 3 to 4 weeks pass by relatively well. Thanks to those who sent well wishes and checked in on me, and if you'd like to join my Patreon community, the link to do so is in the description bar. Plus, you would have my eternal gratitude for helping me keep a roof over my head. And of course, do hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't yet, drop a comment when you can, and let's talk all about the cycle of abuse in the workspace and how it does build resentment and eventually hate that gets trickled down onto those lower down the pipeline. Because I know most people, when looking at workplace resentment, often come at it from the perspective of the one with lesser power and authority, resenting the one who has power over them, often for abuse of said power, or just because when humans feel powerless, it breeds our resentment. It's a normal, logical reaction to external factors that make us feel threatened about we not being able to do anything about them. But I think something that a lot of us, myself included, don't really consider is the fact that the resentment can also be from the top down, i.e., the person with power resenting those who don't have said power, which I know sounds like I'm talking out of my ass, but bear with me a moment. Because you see, with Severance, I think I finally got to realize why and how that can happen by watching the characters on the show, starting with Harmony Cobell and Eustace Wong, who I think are basically the same person. Now, I don't mean that literally. Clearly, Mrs. Cobell is decades older than Miss Wong. But I think that just as we can see with the way in which they are addressed, one is Mrs. Cobell, even though she, like Miss Wong, isn't married. But the address is to hint at at a difference in age and experience, even though they both had the same start. And by the same start, I am referring to the Wintertide Fellowship, which both Harmony and Eustace got. Because with Eustace Wong, we see a child. Yes, she's clearly been indoctrinated into the cult of Lumon and believes everything that she's told, but she still retains her bits of childish innocence. The enjoyment she finds in the game she's playing, a short-lived joy at the thought of spending the day in Seth Milchick's chair in his office playing at being a boss, before Seth pops that balloon pretty quickly. Her apology to Dylan for not facilitating the meeting with Gretchen properly, which she thinks is what led to Gretchen declaring that she doesn't want to see Dylan again, which in turn led to him requesting a resignation by his outie. Eustace Wong is a nice blend of robotic sincerity and innocence that sometimes causes trouble unknowingly for others, i.e. her tattletale about Seth, which played quite the role in the dressing down that was his assessment session with Mr. Drummond. But at the core, Eustace is a child with the innocence and the understanding that can be acquired via interaction with others, where you get to see their experiences and know them in a way that helps you connect and empathize with them and their situation. And the show shows us this through subtle hints. Her whimsy, her apologizing to Dylan, which is a marked contrast to how she was in the first episode of the season, where she just arrived on the 7th floor for her internship. The Eustace in episode 1 that tells Mark bluntly that she isn't his friend and should not be counted as such is quite different from the Eustace we get in episode 8, who makes that apology even as Seth tries to shut it down. The show has us see that there are moments when Eustace's childish self shines through. And that is why the significance of Seth Milchick handing her the trophy so she can smash her childhood toy into smithereens shortly before she's sent to begin work at another branch matters. It was to symbolize how Lumon requires of its people absolute obedience and to destroy any bit of empathy that they might have had so they can work more effectively without that pesky emotion. And it's equally important that it be Mr. Milchick who forces her to do so as her supervisor. Now, one would expect that based off of this interaction, my thoughts would be on Eustace's resentment as Seth Milchick clearly used his power as her superior to crush that childish whimsy out of her in that scene. But Seth tells her as he hands her the trophy and asks for a game and for her to do it personally, that a personal sacrifice is required of all those who finished the fellowship. And since we can see from previous episodes that Harmony Cobell was also awarded the Wintertide Fellowship, and from Seth's words about sending Eustace Wong off to another branch to effectively kick off her career, we can deduce that the fellowship is a starting block, a way to kickstart the more brilliant and devoted Lumon followers and employees into positions where they get to better serve the company, whilst being aware of their secrets. Then there is a very big possibility that Seth Milchick as well had once been a Wintertide Fellow. Which would then mean that Seth and Harmony each had a supervisor at some point in their life when they were children, who had them with their own hands crush something that was once personal to them, something that mattered, that they derived joy from, as some sort of initiation ceremony into the hallowed halls of Lumon's dead to self and dead to others soulless corporation. With the characterization of Miss Wong, Mr. Milchick, and Mrs. Cobell, we get to see the 3 layers or levels of Lumon management. With Harmony Cobell being utterly soulless at work, like the years and experience has killed all the empathy she might have had, hence why she's almost a completely different person outside work, albeit very creepy. And then there's Seth Milchick, who is partly human and has the occasional warmth while still serving corporate interest. Clearly, he is not pleased with Mrs. Cobell's bludgeoning style of management. He is probably the type of person and supervisor who believes that we can attract bees with honey rather than a cudgel. And that is the root of his resentment and why he starts to dislike the members of the MDR team. Because to him, he isn't as terrible as Amoni Cobell, and yet they still stay disrespecting and disobeying his orders. Seth Milchick's resentment towards the team is rooted in his anger that they don't seem to recognize the good thing they have going with him as the head of the severed floor, because he is much better than Amoni Cobell. But that's the thing, it begs to reason and demands that we ask ourselves, is there a possibility that Harmony Cobell was once Seth Milchick? Could she also have had that streak of humanity and kindness that then slowly gets squeezed out of her by virtue of the soulless corporation within which she has taken work? Did she also start by trying to liven things up the way in which Seth Milchick does? And in turn is punished by her superiors because she's unable to make her subordinates toe the line? I sometimes wonder as I watched the show and thought about it, I wondered if there isn't a trace bit of jealousy in the mix as well. No matter how much Mark, Dylan, Irving, and Ellie are screw things up really badly in the show, they never have to face Mr. Drummond with his Orkin frame or James Egan with his general creepiness. And so far as Seth and Harmony are concerned, the people who report to them don't have it as hard as they do. Now, I'm not attempting to justify workplace abuse and the utter BS that is office politics. Trust me, I think it is absolute shite as well. But watching Severance has made me wonder, are bosses and supervisors born the way they were, or did the system contort them into being who they became, which in turn is what bred all that resentment, making it that no matter how hard we worked and tried to do our jobs and find a modicum of happiness in our lives and for ourselves, our bosses are still miserable. Because heavy is the head that wears the crown, and all that responsibility, all that fighting through the sludge, taking in the microaggressions, the abuse, the stripping of all empathy, it takes its toll on people. It has the ability to make them change. And I wonder if what then stands at the heart of it all is the resentment, because they get to look at the innocence of their subordinates who don't know the bullshit that's coming their way, who are still trying to live their lives with said innocence. And I wonder if that's not what makes them even more pissed off. When Seth Milchick watched Eustace Wong's heart break slightly as he ordered her to destroy her toy, did he see himself in her? Did he see his younger self who still had high hopes for what the job could be and the change it could enact? Did he see his younger self in that moment? When the toy was crushed, did he think to himself and wonder what could have been and all that he had lost and what was taken from him? Is that the reason why we had the episode focused on Harmony Cobell's return back home, even as she showed her aunt the truth? That this work, this job that she had poured her life and soul into, robbed her of her ideas, her ingenuity, and still had the audacity to kick her out when they were through and leave her with nothing. Was the scene to show us just how much corporations can take from us until all that is left is the husk that is then discarded when it has no more use? Because if that's the case, then isn't it logical that the husk starts to resent those who still have fruit and life to give? Maybe that's the reason why bosses cannot stand those who work under them. Because all that idealism just shows how much they've lost and sacrificed on their way to getting to the top. And they then respond by meting out the same abuse that they've suffered on those who are coming up after them, which then creates a system, an endless cycle of asshole supervisors who in turn breed asshole supervisors, i.e., Harmony Cobell and Seth Milchick, although to be fair, Seth was driven to that point as well by all the BS of Mr. Drummond, who might not be his direct supervisor. It's clear that the head of the severed floor reports directly to the board, and Drummond serves as some sort of liaison with some power due to him reporting directly to James Egan. But all the same has enough clout to be the one to review Seth's clusterfuck performance. But ultimately, what Seth ends up doing is reaping a lot of the seeds that Harmony had planted previously. But maybe all of this is me just talking out of my ass. And you all are telling me right now to, in the words of Seth Milchick, devour feculence. To which I'm just going to say, okay. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Support me on Patreon if you can afford to. And until tomorrow's video, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.